Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the new unit. We're going to be talking about a lot of things in this unit, but one of the things that I wanted to do is just recap some of the things that we've already gone through. So you'll see that that's what the reading is about this in this lesson. I want to talk to you in this video about the question that I get asked the most, and that is what finally has led people to have no contact with their narcissistic ex. So, in many cases, there was actually a single moment that it became the catalyst for change. There's often a whole lot of events that lead up to it, of course, but there's generally one thing, and it's like a light bulb goes out with for that person. So, look, with the permission of a couple of people, I'm going to share some of the stories of people that I know. And I'm going to obviously do it anonymously to protect the people that have actually shared, but to give you some indication of what it is that other people have experienced. The stories come from separate individuals. They're not actually connected in any way. And that's all that I'm actually going to tell you about their identities, because it's actually not what's important. I'm not sharing these stories for shock value, simply because oftentimes reading about the successful transition of others who have survived narcissistic abuse can actually inspire us to make decisions about our own situations, but also to stay firm in the decision that you may have already made to move from a narcissistic relationship. So, the first person that I'm going to tell you about, I'm going to read what it is that they've shared. So, here we go. He had no idea how much he was hurting me by looking at porn all day on his phone. One day, I woke up and I realized I didn't care anymore. It was like a light switch went off. I was numb to his abuse. He went for a drive into town and there was a puppy on the side of the road that had gotten out of a fenced yard. And I said, "Hey, let's stop and put him back." And he said, "Look, the dog will be fine," and kept on driving. We got into town and an old man was pulling out of the store parking lot with an old motorhome and one of the side doors were open. So I said, "Wait, let's let him know that there's a problem." My husband screamed at me to mind my own business. I said, "Fine." But I knew it was time. I couldn't keep going on. A few months earlier, he'd started to show a big interest in my daughter. I noticed that lately, when she went to say goodbye, he would turn his head. He ended up kissing her on the lips. He would sit down so she would have to bend over and he would get a good look at her breasts. He lived on a lake and she was taking a shower and everyone else was at the lake. Someone needed something and so he volunteered to go up to the house. My mum bell went crazy and that's when I said, "I'll go with you." Of course, he was absolutely furious. I don't know what he thought I was going to do, but I couldn't take the chance. That was the light bulb moment for this particular woman. The next person I'm going to talk about was a person who really knew that they had to leave their narcissist because the boyfriend had started to gaslight her. And this is her words. "I knew I had to leave 4 months in. I'd been experienced the love bombing and thought that we were falling in love. But for some reason, I always had concerns and held back while I kept going on with my life. Over time, I learned that my concerns weren't for nothing. I found out that he'd been an excessive drug user for years. Although, according to him, he pretty much stopped when with me, I didn't agree with it. And then he credited me for making him deal with his life. He drank a lot at first, which I didn't see. Which I didn't like, as I'd gone out with an alcoholic in the past. But then he seemed to cut down. He admitted he had cheated on his ex-wife several times, and that knocked me sick. And I pulled him on this and told him how shocked I was. He didn't seem to have much empathy towards his ex-wife at all. He was constantly banging on about his exes, calling them psychos and worse. He was explaining domestic issues and fights that they had had. I'd had enough. I was making subtle hits to make him stop. Anyway, after 4 months of me playing it cool and kind of cringing a little about the love bombing, I actually started to expect a little bit more. He went all distant and became very unreliable with plans he'd made with me. Of course, when I tried to bring this up, he became so angry with me. Plus, he used his son as an excuse and to guilt me. He was totally unreasonable. I got the silent treatment, and he was telling me I was angry when I wasn't. Just that I was just upset at his uncaring behavior. I felt all of a sudden anxious all the time. I was walking on eggshells. And when I thought he was smitten with me, I Googled something, and the pattern of courtship, his chaotic past he admitted to, and shocker, matched the personality traits of a narcissist. I knew I had to leave. I mean, unless he suddenly showed me that he'd changed his personality trait. Well, of course, he never did. And we both just stopped talking to each other. The falling out for me was so upsetting, but I never said a word back to him. I knew I could not resolve the conflict with him. And looking back, he had hinted about me seeing his bad side and how he'd been hurt and upset when we had broken up, even though we'd never argued. Nowadays, I can see, let me try again. Nowadays, I can see how me pulling him up and having an opinion made him not agreeable in his mind. He wanted me to be his girl and had warned me that I couldn't get my way all the time. This after he'd cancelled other arrangements. It was really odd behavior, but looking back, I realize now I didn't see it at the time. So the third person that I'm going to talk about says that they knew they had to go no contact with their narcissist when their father actually committed suicide. And this is a person who actually went no contact with their family. So, like I said, this is their words. I left my family good for good after my father died, and I saw how heartless they truly were. He barely had a funeral, and they were 20 times more concerned with getting the money that he had left. The only reason they gave the half-assed funeral they did was so their name could be in the papers to get all his stuff. They felt no remorse whatsoever for the trouble they had caused him. They read his suicide letter, and nothing about how they spun it said anything except that he was crazy. My sister got over $100,000 from his death and screwed over everyone else in the end. And when we found out the rest of the family didn't bother to get him even a tombstone, she said it wasn't her problem and to let somebody else pay for it. I noticed that they only pretended to care in front of me because in the end I was closer to him. They figured out he had told me stuff, I guess. They completely disregarded my sister as a person while everything was being planned. We used it to our advantage while we were fighting them. Of course, I got a shout out in the letter too. So at the time, I did say a million times I didn't want the money. In my mind, I didn't deserve it because I felt like I could have saved him and I didn't. I was too busy all the time dealing with the narcissistic bullshit. If I had seen the hotel room just a few hours before he died, I would never have left him there. Anyway, I guess it was then I realized my whole life I've most likely been living with psychopaths or narcissists. It was like at that moment, I suddenly recognized that I had been at the mercy of these people in my life. I guess I should be lucky I came out with only some issues of nerves and anxiety because I know for a fact I barely missed out on a lot worse. Once everything was done, I went no contact. But every now and then they find me, and every now and then I have to have those conversations. So, look, these are just three stories of people who had a light bulb moment when they realized that they had to leave their narcissist. One, it was how the family reacted when the father committed suicide. Another person was somebody who quite new into the relationship, started to learn about how her new boyfriend actually spoke about previous relationships and realized that their relationship was going in a direction that she didn't want to. And the first person that we spoke about was somebody who clearly saw her husband's lack of empathy and interest in other people, one being the dog on the side of the road and one being the gentleman whose car door was open. These were light bulb moments for these people in these situations. Light bulb moments which made them change their life and leave or have no contact with narcissists in the future. One of the things that we talk about when co-parenting with a narcissist is that you have to some extent, keep contact with them. But it's all about boundaries. It's all about making sure that any contact that you have is about that business of parenting and nothing else. Enjoy the lesson, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.